Welcome to Earthworm Slumber Party,
where we explore big ideas playfully.
My name is Opulence, and I love putting my face in cats' bodies.
My name is Nisha, and I love squeezing cats' faces to my face. So, today, we have a very exciting topic about grief, love, and home. But first, what are you composting today?
I am composting, I think, complacency. I've been feeling very moved by the impermanence of life and just feeling in touch with my mortality and just wanting to live life in a more present way. So I'm also trying to let go of FOMO, fear of missing out, and just really embrace that I'm where I'm supposed to be, when I'm supposed to be there. And I actually also have this affirmation, which is I've seen enough. It's okay if I miss out. I've seen enough. What about you? What are you composting, Nisha?
I just want to say I love that. I've seen enough, because I've seen enough also makes me think of I am enough. And I feel like it's kind of connected to what I'm composting, which is I'm composting the idea of feeling too busy. I feel like this season, so we're recording this right now, it's fall 2024. I just have been traveling a lot. I've been off my routine and I've just felt so busy because of it. But at the same time, I'm doing things that I really love and really make me happy. So I think it's not so much about being busy, but how am I spending my time and what do I enjoy? But also how is it affecting my body, and finding ways to just keep nourishing it without being kind of stuck in this land of busy, which I don't know, the word busy, just whenever I say it, I just kind of cringe. So I don't want to be busy anymore. I want to be fully nourished, which sometimes means I'm doing things. And that also kind of goes to what you're talking about with, feeling the enoughness, but also I've been having some FOMO too, because lately I've been feeling a little burnt out. So I've been saying no to things, and they've been things that I've really wanted to go to, but I've just had to say no because I need to rest.
Wow. I love that we are both releasing these themes and around busyness or feeling like we should be doing something, but really claiming presence with ourselves. I mean, we are recording kind of in a historic moment. It's the day before Election Day. We know that the emotions in the next couple of days are going to be really high. Stress is going to be high. And I think it's an interesting moment for us to kind of claim groundedness, presence, slowness with ourselves and at our homes, because I know that in these big flashpoints, you can get pulled into so much organizing or connecting. But in truth, resistance is a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's important, even in these high stress moments, for us to just stay grounded to ourselves, to our homes, to our routines. That all is really important.
Yeah, I love that. I have on my Instagram, I have a broadcast channel. So it's basically just this little channel I created within the app. And I asked people yesterday, for this week, what are you going to do to support yourself given, what's happening with the election? And 3 people said, I just want to slow down. I don't want to be in urgency. And so that was totally a theme. So when you said that, I was people are already realizing and seeing that slowing down is so essential. And it makes me think about that idea of how when things feel urgent, actually slowing down is a great tool to use.
Absolutely. It actually, one of my favorite Thich Nhat Hanh quotes, it's a little bit of a mini story where he talks about being on a refugee boat from Vietnam and how when there was a storm or pirates came, the best thing that he could do and that anyone can do in that situation that could save lives was actually to stay calm and present. And I always share that when I do de-escalation training. So I'm we want to save each other. We want to fix things. Sometimes actually doing nothing or being a calm, grounded presence, observing, not jumping into urgency, fear-based action, that can actually be extremely powerful. I'm not saying not to take action, but I am saying taking a breath, taking a pause, grounding, all of those things are so valuable in this time.
Yeah, and it also informs what action you do take next, right? When you can get present with what's happening in your body and in your environment. So I completely agree. Yeah. I also want to add that we are recording from my bed.
No, it's so exciting. This is a literal slumber party, and
Yes.
we have our little stuffed animals with us. So you can check out the video on YouTube. It's definitely worth checking out because we also got dressed up today.
We did.
We're looking fabulous. And we had a literal slumber party last night.
We did. It was so fun. I made my yummy mac and cheese and we watched a movie.
Yeah, and we specifically watched Her by, I don't really know who the director was, but that was Phoenix, a wild movie about AI.
Yeah.
I know we could go into that rabbit hole, but I think you have a pretty exciting story for us today, right, Nisha?
I do. I do have a story. So the topic today is grief, love, and home. And I thought about this because how I've related to home has always just kind of felt like something is missing. But I am going to start with actually a story about how I learned to ride my bike. So, when I was little, from when I was born to around the end of second grade, we lived in a house in the suburbs of Chicago, and it was a raised ranch house. So that means that if you don't know, you enter and you're kind of like in a foyer, and then you either go up or you go down. So there's no ground floor per se. There was an upstairs and then there's a downstairs. And on the upstairs part off of the kitchen, there was a deck. And then on the deck, you took stairs down, and before you got to the grass, in the backyard, we had this concrete area that I think my mom told me that we actually added. So it was this concrete, big concrete slab, basically. And my dad taught me how to ride my bike by drawing a big number 8, like an infinity sign, in chalk on this big slab that basically was the width of the house, even wider than the house. Wow. And probably, I don't know, I was little, so I wonder how big I actually envisioned this. But, I could basically take my bike and do this infinity sign and go all the way around with a lot of ease. So I learned to bike there, and I thought it was so smart. My dad was an engineer, so I thought it was very engineering of him to be oh, we'll just do this because I get to go straight, but then I get to turn, and then I got to keep doing it. And I really loved our backyard. It was so big. I loved how big the playing area was with the grass. It just made me so happy. I kind of felt bad for my dad that he had to mow it all the time. So that was something that he did, but I didn't have to do it. So I just had fun. And we actually even there was an area for a swimming pool. The people who had the house before us had a pool there, but my parents took it out because it was just too much to maintain. But I loved that backyard. I have such fond memories of that backyard. It felt so spacious and free. And it also felt me learning to ride my bike there, that felt like a moment of growth for me, because my dad was very encouraging, and he just found ways to help me do things. And, I've probably talked about this on the podcast, and I do talk about my mother wound. My mom came more from a place of critique and worry, and that really kind of hurt me. So when my dad taught me something, it felt really special. And I think these are the connections I have with my first home that I lived in. And after we left that house, and also I was just younger, I just kind of felt free, and I loved to play, and I just enjoyed that home. It was small, but it was just really cozy. And then we moved to another house just a couple miles away that had more bedrooms, and it had a 2-car garage because we only had a 1-car garage. But the backyard was it was a normal size, I guess. It's just that our previous one was so big. But I just remember being really sad that I was happy that we had a bigger house, and that, my parents seemed happy, and, we had a really big basement actually, which was really cool. But I kind of felt not having that space in the backyard just felt like such a loss. And I don't know, I would say I still feel that grief from, losing this part of the house that I feel also I was we have the biggest backyard in the world, at that age, that's how I'm thinking. And yeah, there was just something about it that signified freedom and growth for me. And I felt like it wasn't like that. And then in that house, we were getting older. That was also around the time when, my brother, we were in second and sixth grade. My brother was in sixth grade when we moved to that house. And then, my brother started going to junior high. I started getting older and wanted to do things. And I was like told no, like my parents being strict, like became a thing where it wasn't really like that when I was younger. So it's not like I hated the house or anything like that, but there's just more of that home feeling I had with my first house, and just like that backyard. It felt so special. And I just have I don't have like a lot of memories, but the ones I do just feel just so close to my heart and meaningful. Like it felt like a connection I had in my life of something that was ours as a family too, not just mine. Like we all enjoyed that backyard. There were these really pretty white flowers in the backyard. It was surrounded by evergreens too, which were basically like the fence was like all these evergreens. And yeah, like I said, I'm curious if I went there today, like would it feel as big? But I've talked to my mom about it. She's like, no, it was like a really big backyard because I remember the size of our second house's backyard, which that was the house we had for the rest of my life before my mom moved to California a few years ago. But it was definitely smaller, and yeah, it just wasn't the same. So that's my story of home and the grief and love that I experienced in the first house that I grew up in.
Wow, thank you for sharing, Nisha. It definitely sounds like, it's like very much a story about home and like what home means and like what it is to transition out of home and like what the like place that those spaces, not just the physical place and the literal memories, but the feeling they create and what it comes to represent through our life.
Yeah, I think when you said transition, that really like stuck with me. It was that transition that I think just felt really hard and felt like such a loss. But at the same time, I'm also grateful. I'm so happy that I have those memories and I have that as a place in my life. Like that feels so special to have this as a place in my life where I got to experience so much in the most formative years of my life, right? Being a child, being like up to like probably 8 years old. It was like such a formative part of my life, that house and the backyard and the kitchen and every like little aspect of it just really, it felt just right. I had this captain's bed too, and so like a captain, there was like a twin size bed, but then they had these drawers underneath it. And another like really nice memory I have is that I would have bad dreams and I would scream, and my dad would come to the room and he would just sit against the bed, like, and just sit there till I went to sleep. And there were some times that I screamed on purpose.
Oh, that's kind of cute, honestly.
Yeah, because I just wanted him to come, and he always just did it so willingly. He never complained. He was a really light sleeper, so of course when I screamed, I always woke him up. But yeah, that also is like a sweet memory that I think I just felt very cared for in that home, And it's not like I didn't feel. My parents always cared for my brother and I, but I think there was the sense of freedom and being cared for that I had. So
yeah, I mean, the theme is home, love, and grief, right? Mm-hmm. And like, well, one, I think it's really cute to think of your younger self screaming on purpose to get your dad's attention, because I think that as children, we think we're so sneaky, but I'm sure your dad could tell.
I'm sure.
Like, I'm sure the quality of scream was different. But yeah, I mean, I think like what you're defining or what you're sharing about your dad, just like so willingly sitting with you as you fell back asleep. Like, I can just imagine the safety and care, and like it wasn't a burden to him. Like, I think those are all defining aspects of love. And I feel like the deeper thing we're talking about is like, what is home? And I really appreciate you giving us this like very tangible, descriptive naming of this first home, and how like the second home is still good. It's still like you're still there with your family. It wasn't bad. It wasn't worse, but it didn't capture that same sense of that first home in your life, which I think is a very beautiful reflection. I think that many of us can relate to having a first home where the sense of safety was so present that it wasn't even a question. And maybe we didn't even understand that was home until we left it. I definitely had that experience when I moved out of South Carolina and I came to LA, I think in 2014. It was my first time living outside of South Carolina and I was 23. And I think I just came to realize wow, there were all these ways that I did experience and receive community. There was all this support. If I needed someone in an emergency to come pick me up, I probably had a few people who could do that. Whereas moving to LA, I was suddenly very much alone. It wasn't like I could make a Facebook status asking for something and it would show up at my house. And it just made me appreciate the level of community support I had. Even though, if I'm honest, I didn't think I was mad at my community. I didn't feel supported by them. But when I left South Carolina, I realized wow, I actually had a huge community there that I didn't really notice until I left,
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. That sounds really sweet in terms of the just that reflecting and realizing just kind of that idea of you don't know what you have till you lose it. I also feel like that happened when I moved from Chicago to LA 7 years ago. The one thing that I missed the most about Chicago that I didn't realize I loved so much was just seeing the leaves change color in the fall.
Oh, I living in Atlanta now, it is beautiful.
It's so nice.
The fall is a gift.
It's just it's different here and I really miss it. And I wasn't one of those people where I went apple picking and carved pumpkins all in the fall. I was not this really person who's just stand fall. But just the walking, the crisp air, just the earth at that time feels so delightful. And I actually just went to Minneapolis last week for work, and I got to actually drive from Minneapolis to Rochester, which is about a little over an hour. And it was just the best drive. The fall colors were so pretty. I was I am in the Midwest. This is great. It was just such a nice vibe. And there was no traffic. So I was just going, 70, 75 miles an hour, just playing music and watching, looking at the trees and the land. And it was just so nice. So I really didn't realize how much I would miss that till I left. So when you said that, that's what I thought about as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, something like the weather or trees. Definitely when I came to LA, I was oh, wow, there are no trees here. So there are those things that we take for granted in our environment. Yeah. I think a little nuance I want to pull out of what I was naming, which I think queer people can really relate to, is I was actively in conflict with my community in South Carolina. I did not perceive them to be supportive. And it's really in those moments sometimes where we can be so caught up in the points of tension or how we've been let down or disappointed. But then when you move, it's oh my gosh, this thing I really didn't appreciate was actually present for me. And it's seeing the unseen. Similarly to what you're saying with the leaves and the weather, it's oh, I just, I think that growing up on the East Coast, you always assume you're going to see the leaves. Every fall is the same. And it is you go through the change of seasons and then you come to LA where it is sunny all the time. And you're oh, I guess the change of seasons isn't universal. Similarly, when I moved back to the Southeast, I realized the food, the quality of food and produce we get in LA, not universal. So I guess all that to say home, I think for me, it's also interesting. I recently went on a camping trip this summer. It was a group camping trip. It was this music festival thing. And I really felt the energy of home. And I was wow, it's so interesting to find myself feeling the emotion and the concept of home coming up in my soul, even though I'm somewhere with a lot of strangers that I've never been before. Have you ever had an experience like that where you go somewhere or you meet someone and you're oh my gosh, I actually feel so at home here?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I want to thank you for adding that nuance, because I could see how it almost now that you're in a new place, it's it actually shifts how you it can shift how you like relate to the people that you were in, like you said, actively in conflict with.
I mean, yes. And I also, sorry to jump back in here on this, but like I feel like there's a like such a nuance around queerness and home, because I think a lot of queer people have homes and families and networks and churches that we're born into that we feel core tension within. And I actually think it's a universal tension that people feel differently, but like, it's like, oh, I'm at home here, but also this space is hostile to me in some way if they knew who I really was. So while I'm in a home, I'm in a community I belong in, I don't truly belong here, so I have to leave it. And so it creates a lot of tension around this concept of home. And then when you do leave, you're able to find deeper home in who you are. You're able to find chosen home, chosen family, but you still miss and long for your first home. And I think when you described your first home, part of what it reminds me of is the purity and the innocence of a home before we realize we might not belong in it, you know?
Yeah. Thank you so much. And to answer your question, actually, just a few weeks ago, I had this experience. I went to a South Asian comedy show. It was a series for, I think, maybe 8 or 10 years called South Asian AF. And they had the last show. The organizer was just, kind of done, and she'd been doing it for some time and decided to have the last show. And I went, and it was just so amazing. And it was just really cool to be in community and just be laughing about things that like we knew each other got. And when we left the theater, there was just like a big crowd of like South Asian people outside. And my friend was like, oh, this, like, I don't see these many South Asian people like in one place, like outside of a wedding, you know what I mean? Especially like in LA, it was just nice to have that surroundings, and it just felt very like at home. And I think that kind of goes back to that, the idea of belonging. I feel like that community, even though like there's a lot of people there I didn't know, but we came together for this like common, like not just like purpose, but also the fact that it was the last show to celebrate together, So, and it was really, really hilarious too. So that was a recent experience where I did have that feeling, and it was really, really nice.
Wow, Nisha, I love that. I love that, like, just the uplifting of like a community-based art project almost, like coming together to look at art together, celebrating our common identity. That sounds like a beautiful space. I think that is part of what was special about the festival I went to. I was around like 300 other queer and trans people of color, and it was so beautiful. And I think that, it's kind of reminding me of in 2014 in LA, the show Glee. Are you familiar with that show?
Yeah.
Glee decided to hold a storyline that involved like a trans chorus.
Oh, okay.
And so all these trans people all over LA, and some even came from out of state, came to be extras on this show. And it was my first time being around like 200 trans people. And it was an incredible gathering. I think the downfall was that we were gathered by like Universal Studios. And so I think when we can create those spaces together, it can be really powerful. And it kind of leads me to our final question, which is, what are you planting?
Yes, what am I planting today? I think today, especially after this conversation, I am planting just the idea of place. I think there's just something around the idea of place that I want to just plant in my heart, just realizing that everything is so like relationally dependent, sometimes on who we're with and where we are. And kind of as an ode to my story of my first home, I really want to think about place being special, because I think a lot of my life, and the reason I am doing this intentionally is because a lot of my life I've kind of been like what feels like home. And I think it's really helpful for me it was helpful for me to share this story, to remind myself that I have had places in my life that meant something to me. And I think that I haven't really thought about that as intentionally. So like just home as place. And what I was also saying about feeling that being cared for, that safety, that belonging. It's just so special. So that's what I'm planting today. What about you?
Wow, I love that you're planting those things. I think definitely the day before an election day, we need to plant the feeling of safety and love.
Yes.
And like care for and stability. And I also love place. I love it just because, when I do land acknowledgements, I often ask people to connect with every land they've ever lived on. And just like reminding us, I truly believe that if we've lived somewhere, it's not an accident. And I kind of believe that the earth and land controls everything. And I know, like, I have friends that have tried to move somewhere, like tried to move to New York, and everything just goes wrong. They spill their coffee every day. They can't get a job, like everything. And they just get pushed out of that land. And so I really love you bringing that in. And I often have people like connect to their homelands. And I think I'm going to name this affirmation because I think it's really powerful, which is like, land never abandons us and we never abandon land. Like the spiritual connection between land and spirit and ancestry, it's all very deep and profound. And I think those relationships, even though like I've never been on my family's homeland, I still believe in that connection and nourish that connection. I know we like live in a world where everyone's like talking about their ancestors, talking about their spirit guides. And I'm like, our land, our homelands, lands that we've lived on before, lands that we walk on every day, like whether we're going to our mailbox or the grocery store, that land is also part of what like supports us in this life. Literally supports us, like literally holds up our little feet. But that was my little rant on land. I think from this story, I am planting. I'm trying to find the right word for it. It's not quite capacity. It's not quite forgiveness. But maybe it is loving presence. And to know that even as we hold boundaries or take space, or even look back at parts of our lives and feel the pain of being rejected or not being able to be our true selves, that we can also revisit that land, we can revisit that relationship, and we can hold the love that existed alongside, at times, ignorance or at times, narrow-mindedness. So maybe like loving capacity. Yeah, loving capacity.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. I'm gonna definitely think about that more because I think that it's so connected to everything we talked about.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for joining us today. Thank you for sharing your story, Nisha.
Thank you.
Bye. We decided that for our final episode this season, we would love to have a listener episode, and we want to hear from you.
Yeah, we're going to be doing an episode in line with our theme this season about grief, love, and pets. So some questions that can inspire you are, what are some ways you've grieved a pet that surprised you? Share stories of connecting with your pet after they died. And what have your pets taught you about love? So head to that fan mail text message button in our show notes and let us know.
And if you just want to send us a message letting us know what you thought about the podcast, we would love that too. Thank you.
Bye. Earthworm Slumber Party is hosted by Opulence Abundance and Nisha Modi, edited and scored by Adrien Garbar, and produced by Dalya Guerin.